Welcome to the Wealthy Artist Podcast. And I'm your host, Sarah Clanton.
And I'm Wilson Harwood, and we're talking about how to develop your wealth,
enjoy financial freedom,
enjoy artistic freedom,
and live the life you've always imagined. Let's do this podcast thing. Woo! Welcome! I probably just maxed that out. I'll do that again. Welcome to the Wealthy. You should try.
I kind of want this to be in the podcast now. Welcome to the Wealthy Artist Podcast, everyone. How are you today? We're great.
Doing great.
Yeah. We're doing as good as we can.
Yeah.
We are excited to bring to you the podcast part 2 episode. Part dos. How many languages could we say that in? I don't know. Do you know French?
You already said it in French.
Is that French?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's
yes.
right.
Oui.
Oui.
Je parle un peu de français.
And then we went over the first half of this checklist on the first episode, and we ended up, I think, at number 16, which was to create a press release for your single. And now we're going to move into 4 weeks out.
Real quick, though, we should tell everybody where they can get their copy of this checklist, so that if they want to follow along or download it later, where can they do that?
That's right. So if you don't have the checklist already, you can definitely get one at www.elevatedmusic.co, which is my production website. And at the very top of the website, if you're on mobile, you'll see it right there. If you go onto your desktop or browser, you'll also see it at the top of the website there. Just pop in your email and you'll get it immediately downloaded, and you can follow along with us.
Yes.
Unless you're driving. Don't do
and
that.
I love, just to kind of recap a little bit, we were talking before we hopped on here about how this is just one way to release a song, and it is a pretty comprehensive list of all the things you could do. You can cater it to your release style, to your brand, but I think this is really great. There's so many things that you might forget to do because there are so many things. So this is a great checklist. Wilson, it's amazing. You're giving it away for free. It's just so cool. So
thanks.
We should dive in. Yeah. So we're 4 weeks out from release now. So you've got a month.
Mm-hmm.
And where did we start? How many weeks out are we?
6 weeks out.
This whole 6 weeks. Great.
And the reason for that was, I've heard this thing over and over again about how the Spotify algorithm is basically working on this 6-week cycle. So if you release a single every 6 weeks, you're kind of like poking the algorithm, the alligator rhythm, and getting it to work in your favor. Cool. So I'm, and I'm not saying that that's the best thing to do. The idea of releasing a single every 6 weeks to me sounds exhausting.
Yeah. I'm like,
you become like this machine or factory. And I kind of think us artists aren't necessarily factories. We're kind of more artists.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother episode.
Oh, I just saw a post about that, about how this generation is we're being expected to be content creators, and it's not the same. So it's really good to think about those boundaries. Yeah. And maybe, this release cycle of every six weeks is a part of the year. Maybe it's just a quarter of your year and you do it in one season. And maybe the other part of the season, you're just creating. So, you can do with this as you'd like, but I just think it's really, really comprehensive and awesome.
And just as a side note there too, one thing I'm thinking about for my EP release is doing, 3 singles out of a 5-song EP. So that would be 3 singles every 6 weeks. And then you drop the EP with the 2 extra songs, which I'm like, those songs aren't probably as strong. So I'll just throw them in there and people may or may not listen to it. It's kind of like you can put your best foot forward with singles and then still have this ability to release an album as well. Yeah. And I think it's, for a lot of us, I think that's still important to have an album every once in a while and not just be this single factory.
Yeah, I like the album. It depends on what you're doing and what the concept is, but I'm nostalgic for the album.
Mm-hmm. Or you could release the entire album as a single, I think John Mayer did that, maybe, I don't know. And then release the album after you've released all the singles. So there's really no right or wrong. But that means also you could create an album in the traditional way by spending a year on it, and then you spend the next year promoting it with singles.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, it could be done. That's a great thing about where we're at now.
Yeah,
with the music industry. Do it how you want. So I'm gonna pull up here the checklist so the peeps can see it. All right.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this part. Yeah, if you're on YouTube, you can follow along at the Wealthy Artist Podcast on YouTube. And so we are at 4 weeks out here. So 17 is to begin sending out your press release to press contacts on your lists. And I put a little like light bulb thing on the checklist. Yeah, that says the key is to follow up a lot. And I think if anyone has done their own press before, have you done your own press before, Sarah?
I have before. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt. And
yeah, I've found that that's like something that I've enjoyed hiring out, because if I look at my time, and it depends, like I haven't used a publicist or like done press for every release either.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. And so it's up to you if you want to hire it out. But I do think if you're doing it yourself, following up a lot, not feeling ashamed to follow up is important.
It's good practice for booking. It's good practice for
in here, I kind of took this from Ari's list to resend an email every 4 days. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of a lot, but maybe it would work, you know? And if you don't feel like 4 days is right for you, then you could do once a week. But as soon as you get into less than once a week, that might be a little too long for the follow-ups, because people these guys just get so many
emails. Yeah, and try different times of the day too. I mean, I remember this guy, I would have to email first thing in the morning if I ever wanted a response from him for a booking thing in Colorado.
Yeah.
And otherwise he just was like, it was just getting lost in the box. So
yeah, well, that's great to know. So you can use a program like Boomerang for Gmail. And then I actually personally like to use a CRM called HubSpot,
I don't know what either of these
amazing. So Boomerang I've used before, and it works pretty well. If you use Gmail, it's like a plugin that you add into your browser when you're using Gmail on the desktop. I think
does it just remind you to follow up, or what does it do?
It actually automatically, it's like a boomerang, like
it will follow up for you. You've like automated it to do that.
Yeah, you can tell it like send this email again every 4 days if they don't open it or if they don't reply to you.
Got it. Cool.
So yeah, it's a pretty cool program. And that might even be the best option. HubSpot is a little more hands-on, but I like it because it's like super organized. It's a customer relations management software. So you can actually use it and put all your press contacts in there and then set reminders to follow up with them. And then when you log in and see your task lists for that day, it'll be like, follow up with this person. So you got to actually follow up. And you put notes like what's going on, but I like it more because it creates a more organized system. If you have multiple releases over time, you have like your press contacts in HubSpot, so you can keep up with them and keep in touch with them and develop a relationship with them rather than just boomeranging them incessantly. So number 18 is to begin setting up ads on Facebook for $5 to $10 a day. So this is the one that probably makes some of you guys cringe. I can imagine. I can just feel it like, oh, Facebook ads.
But you have you did a great episode on that, which is also a podcast episode from a couple weeks ago that you can listen to about why you should use them.
Yeah,
it's really great. Highly recommend.
Check out our Facebook ads episode if you're unfamiliar with Facebook ads, or if you're on the fence about using them. I kind of go over the pros and cons to it. And in that episode, a spoiler alert, you will find out that I am a fan of Facebook ads. I've done them a couple times now, and I've always found them to be very interesting, to say the least. But I do think they have a lot of power. But I also think with great power, you have to learn how to wield it. So this idea of $5 to $10 a day, I think, is a good magical number, because if you do less than that...
For 4 weeks?
Yeah, for 4 weeks. This is something where you really need to look at your own budget, though, and say, like, okay, how much do I want to invest into Facebook ads, into marketing? Because if you don't have a ton of money for this release, you might want to just forego the Facebook ads altogether. And everything else on this checklist is more or less free, or, $20-$30 or something. So the Facebook ad component, I think, is probably the largest marketing component to the checklist. So I would try with every release to put a couple $100 away towards Facebook ads.
And that is so doable. Like, it is so doable when you think about like how much it does cost to hire someone, if you want to do your press. And this is a great thing you can do on your own. It's a great thing to learn. I'm totally resistant to it. And, but I have also used it and found the great benefit. And I do have someone that helps me do it. But I also I just think there's a great benefit to it. It's going to save you versus thousands of dollars. It's going to save you thousands of dollars just investing a few hundred in yourself and doing this. Especially if your intention is clear with who you want to reach. That's going to be great. I can't recommend enough. Don't cast too wide of a blanket. Make sure that you're specific and that an indiepreneur does a great job of combing through that and helping you figure out how to find who's, over whom to cast the net.
Yeah, and I wanted to add this into the checklist, which was, if you've never done Facebook ads, then consider signing up for Indiepreneur's Fan Finder, which I have done, and I found it, challenging but great and thorough. And then I haven't taken Ari's takes streaming and Instagram growth, but I think his method is a little different than Indiepreneur's, although I noticed that his current class is not open. So you might have to figure out what he's doing with that. He might be revamping the course. He might only open it up at certain times, whereas Indiepreneur is always available, and they have a massive community Facebook group and things like that you can always ask.
There's so much
questions
information
to.
there.
Yeah. And I would love to create our own Facebook ads course at some point.
Oh, yeah.
So as I dive, I don't want to rip them off completely. I kind of want to figure out a way to make, I think that there could be ways to make the course stronger. So I'm like, if we make one, I want it to be even better, because I think we could do an even better job of teaching such a complicated thing. Yeah,
and make it just more accessible. I mean, that's what I think with all of this, and like a big thing that we want to make the conversation accessible about wealth, about creative freedom, all of this stuff. And I think it's just super important to, Woo.
I mean, we could make a whole course on just this checklist, like going in depth into how to do everything.
Absolutely.
So these are ideas we're just throwing
If you're
out
interested,
there.
let us know in the comments. If these workshops excite you, let us know, because we want you to feel like you can do this, and it's not too much. Yeah.
So those Facebook ads will bring in new fans, guaranteed. And then it's just a matter of engaging with those new fans on Facebook, Instagram, and trying to pull them into your world. And you can even send follow-up ads to get them on your email list. But just running the ad will actually show you more engagement in your social media than you would have organically. So that's the main reason to do it. So then you want to clear all the licenses for the song. So if your song is a cover song, this is number 19, or if you use samples, just make sure that you have permission to use the samples. There's a lot of, sites like Splice are great sample sites because it's all royalty free. You don't have to clear those samples if you use them appropriately, which means actually throwing them in your song, not just using them individually. And then Sounddrop is a company we both like. That you can use as a distributor specifically for cover songs,
and they take care of your cover licensing. It's great. Yeah,
it's awesome, because it used to be more complicated, and if it's a one-stop shop like that, that's great.
So great.
Number 20 is register your copyrights with the U.S. Copyright Office, and there might be I think there's a way you can do this. I have to look at the fine print on this, but you could register multiple songs in a batch and save some money.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's the same price if you register one song as it is like a whole catalog. So do all the songs together. And in fact, we have another great podcast to listen to is Break the Business podcast. And Ryan, the host of that podcast, he came on my Total Song Registration Workshop, which I'm about to re-release. And he talked all about copyright and how to do it. And he debunked a bunch of myths about how to do it, and I highly recommend tuning into his podcast, reaching out to him if you do have copyright questions. Break the Business podcast. He's really great. Awesome. Actually, he called me and he interviewed me a long time ago before we started this. So he's a great guy. But copyright's definitely important, and it's important, and you're right. You can batch. Send.
I think that's the way I would do it. If you're doing singles, maybe wait. If you're really nervous someone's going to rip you off, maybe you want to spend, I think it's like $80. It's kind of expensive per song. So if you can batch, like, let's say 10, even 20 songs once a year or something,
exactly,
or every 2 years, that might be the way to go. number 21 is to create or update your Wikipedia page, which this is like, holy, I don't even have a Wikipedia page.
You know, I've
Sarah?
started to try and get mine.
Yeah.
But I haven't gone there yet. I started down that rabbit hole for a while and then I didn't. But totally not like, this isn't like an essential, but yeah, go for it.
Although it's cool, right? I mean, because
definitely.
This is the first thing Google will show when you search your artist name usually. So, and it makes you look more legit if you kind of come up as Google's like, oh, well, they're on Wikipedia. It's like anyone can make a Wikipedia page, but
it's
true. It's still like,
I can't remember why I didn't follow through with it. Something happened.
Sounds like just a pain in the butt to do. So
probably was like on a to-do list I threw away on accident. Like just got lost in my brain.
So this is number 21. It's the third week and you're good to go. So then we have 2 weeks out. Actually, so this is a good point. On my checklist, I skipped the third week altogether.
Well, this is kind of, would you do this over the 2 weeks between?
Yeah, exactly. So like in 4 weeks, in week 4, you could spread that work out over 2 weeks. So 2 weeks out, on number 22, you're going to email your list again and give them something special like the behind the scenes video or an early preview of the song demo. And like we said before, just make sure you're giving them something, not just asking or not telling, not just being like, hey, the song's coming out in 2 weeks. See you later. It's like, give them something cool that like gets them excited. And then number 20. Yeah. Number 23 is just create a list of Spotify playlists to contact. So this is like a big deal nowadays. Like when I first started releasing music, this was not something anyone did. And probably with you too, Sarah, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I remember we were trying to pay Spotify playlist companies at one point.
Yes, definitely. Like this is something that's newer to me. And I like, we went over this in the last episode, part 1, about you can submit a song when you release a single to Spotify playlists now. When you do that, that's totally new. So yeah, and I haven't released anything since last year, I think. So it's me neither. I mean, even in a year, I don't think that was on it. Even there last year. So
yeah, well Spotify playlists have been around for maybe like the last 4
I mean
5,
the
6
that
years.
one feature.
Oh, that one feature is not. Yeah, that's pretty new.
That's cool.
But these playlists are not going to be the big Spotify playlists, the branded ones. They're going to be user generated. So you want to add, this is like a total sleuthing. It's going to be a lot of elbow grease. It's probably not going to be super fun, but you could use something like HubSpot as well for this. Would be great. What I was talking about earlier for your press contacts. But you could also just use something like Google Sheets, and you just make a spreadsheet, put their name, their email, and honestly, their information's not going to be available on Spotify. They don't want you to know who they are. But by finding their username and like clicking on who made it, you can start to try to track down, use your detective skills to figure out who runs the playlists in your genre.
Well, what about like people, like I think making your own playlist of artists that are like you, that you like to listen to, like create your playlist, and then there could be a small group of, similar artists, maybe like in your community that you maybe collaborate with, maybe you co-wrote with on the single, that if they made a playlist on their Spotify, so you can also kind of do that organically and not just try and, you can do it from the spectrum of like the big playlist and hunt and find those names, but you can also kind of do it from more organically as well.
Yeah, I think it would be smart to like choose a minimum number of listeners for the playlist, because I don't know if you want to go for a playlist that's only getting like 10 listeners. It might not be worth all your work. But I also agree with you that if you shoot for the ones that maybe have like 300 active listeners a month, that might be I remember hearing that somewhere from a professional
I'm just seeing how they're engaged and are they active there, are they releasing, you can kind of get a sense of it.
It's kind of like booking shows, honestly.
Say what?
It's like booking shows.
Yeah, and like vanity metrics too. It's I think we have to beware of vanity metrics, because just because you have like 1 million views on something doesn't mean any of that's converting to, any kind of ROI. So, if you have like, you judge your, use your gut instinct too. But, there could be a smaller playlist that you're like, man, I just really love those artists and what they're doing and who that curator is. That could be like a more meaningful connection to the fans that are listening there. So you don't want to like spread yourself too thin. Again, don't cast your net too wide. But be smart about like, is there engagement there? Is stuff regularly happening? Are they consistent? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Because people can also buy follows and stuff. Say what?
Yeah, I know. I love how you mentioned ROI because that's something we haven't talked about at all with this playlist. And it's kind of funny because on this checklist, is that nowhere on this checklist has it said like, and now you make all your money back.
Oh, right. Of course. Right.
And I think it's important to remember that your own system, and this might be a great thing. As you were talking, I was like, oh man, we should totally do a whole podcast episode or series on how to create an ROI in music. How do you get a return on your investment in music? I think it would be fun to think of some different models. But anyways,
well, this is kind of a long-term game, right? There are things where you can do more like fast cash, and our business isn't linear. There's lots of different things, but this is like you're also playing. This is a long game. This is investing in like the ripple effect, right?
Totally.
Because the engagement, you're trying to churn, and then when you do go and play shows, people are going to be able to sing along to your music that are coming because you've done this work, and you'll start to see the ripple effect. It may not just be like, all right, I've done it, now I get a check.
Yeah, and I love this idea that Entrepreneur has, which is like the first year, 2 years, even 3 years for someone like me, it's kind of ongoing of like getting out of the grassroots phase where you're just sort of building enough of a fan base that's even interested in you and like is active with you. And then eventually you can start to sell to that fan base. But the first step is building. And if you're starting out as an artist, even and starting out, as I said, could mean starting over several times, depending on how often you engage with your fans. This checklist will help with that. It'll help you develop a more consistent engagement with your fan base and a way to consistently grow it through those Facebook ads.
Absolutely.
So
because sometimes we don't know what to do. And this kind of,
yeah,
if you like structure and this like motivates you to like, okay, now I need to do this thing. Yeah. It will start to pay off.
I'm planning on using it, so hopefully you guys do too. So the number 24 is to add your song to allmusic.com and Discogs. And for those of you who don't know what those two sites are, they're a little heady, but they're super important, especially for someone like me who's a producer. I really appreciate it when artists take the time to show who played on the record and who helped make the record. And in this day and age where we don't have liner notes inside a CD anymore or on a record, it's really hard to figure out like who produced that song. And a lot of this industry is made by people being like, oh, who's the photographer who did the cover art? Or like, who was the producer on that record? Who
Make yourself accessible. It sounds amazing. Make your people accessible. Yeah.
So this is just going to also give your record more, visibility on the internet too. So if you go to allmusic.com, I can't remember. One of them has maybe like a form you fill out, but both of them are fairly simple. And that'll make it so people can search who played on the record.
Awesome. Sweet. We're 1 week out now.
Yeah. This is getting exciting. Oh my God. Do you want to do number 25, Sarah?
Oh, sure. Send out another email to your list and post on socials. Remember to give value, not to ask. Again, this could be some bonus content from the making of your song. And you've got one of these fun light bulb moments. One of our favorite books about giving in business is called The Go-Giver. Give it a read and get inspired on the power of giving value to grow your own business. We also interviewed Bob Berg, co-author of The Go-Giver, and you can listen to that episode as well.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's so fun, and like we've got some other people reaching out to that we hope will be on the podcast that will excite you guys as well. And I think this is important too. I love that you keep emphasizing to give, because the more you give, the more you get, and that's so cliche, but it's so true. And the more we can embody that, it helps us embody more of an abundant mentality instead of scarcity, instead of holding on. We're trusting, we're surrendering, and we're giving. And you want people to get excited, with you, and what you do is a gift, and it will come back around. So I do love this. But The Go-Giver is a great story about that, and very quick read.
Yeah, it's a good one. And as you're sending out these emails, don't think of them as like, oh God, I gotta like spam my list again and bother all these people. Think of it, I can't wait to share this awesome thing that I made with them. And
also think about one person that you're talking to. Don't imagine talking to everybody, but who's your ideal fan? Who's your top fan? Who's your biggest fan? Think of that person, not your mom, not your dad, but who's your biggest fan out there, and think about how you would be talking to them, and be real. Just be yourself. Yeah, are you excited about this song releasing? Well, share the vibe.
Yeah, it's awesome. So then it's release day.
Yeah. Who needs samples when you got us?
Yeah, you can sample us royalty free anytime. So number 27 on the checklist on release day.
Do we skip 26? There's no 26.
Oh, there's no 26.
It's okay. Sorry.
That's great.
We'll
actually.
pretend this is 27.
I had to make one mistake on this checklist.
It's the only one. Whatever. It's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So 26 is the magical hidden number.
Which is funny because that's my favorite number.
Really? Mm-hmm. Weird. All right. So 27 is to send one last email to your list and post on socials, finally asking people to stream your new single. So this is where you're finally like, please do something for me. I've given you like all this behind the scenes content.
And they're excited with you now.
They're super pumped and they're like, yeah, sure. I'll go listen to your song on Spotify or Apple Music. And then you can ask them to do like to follow you and save the song. But at this point, you know, it's a big, you can even ask them to watch your YouTube video if you had a YouTube video release at the same time.
They're going to be excited. They're going to be on your team. You've got them in the hype machine.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been communicating with them and keeping in touch. Like you've been keeping in touch with like a friend who's excited with you, but you've been in the studio and you're like, oh my gosh, I'll be home soon. I've just got, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think if you did this like every 6 weeks, yeah, you'd be emailing your list a lot, but I think you'd find that, yes, the people would unsubscribe, but you don't really want them.
Exactly.
But the people that stay on would be pumped.
Yes.
And they would be like in love with you. Yeah. And I think that we also have this weird thing as artists. When I've done my email list for my businesses, I find it way easier to just be like, I don't care. They unsubscribe, whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to buy from me anyways. But when I'm an artist, it like hurts. Mm-hmm. I'm like, they don't like me.
But I got that actually same piece of advice from somebody who said, send an email out every other week. And whoever unsubscribes like doesn't need to be there anyway. And like you will like really cultivate that really strong fan base. So
and that's what you want. Mm-hmm. You want a hardcore fan base. And I think we're all guilty of it. I'm super guilty of it. I'll email my artist list like every 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I haven't been as regular yet.
Yeah,
lately.
And then I'll release a song and I'll be like, "Hey, everybody! Like, I haven't talked to you in a year, but like, buy my music." And then it's like, and then you don't hear from them again.
Exactly.
And that's pretty messed up if you think of it from like a friendship.
Yeah,
you know, it's just not a cool thing.
And we all have seasons. Like, you know, sometimes we need to take breaks. Like with me, with my artistry, since like the whole Ponzi scheme thing, and like my business has shifted a little bit with the pandemic. Some new projects have happened, and so I'm kind of like in this I'm in this transformative stage myself. And so, but yeah, I think you can take breaks and don't feel guilty about that. You know, it's not like you have to do this all the time. But absolutely, when you do want to, you know, reemerge, I think that's a really great point. You know. Maybe reintroduce yourself and do that.
I would even challenge people. I'm totally
guilty of it, you know?
Emailing once a week. I would challenge people to try that.
For how long would you say?
I would try it for, you know, maybe start with this checklist where I think we said, like 3 or 4 times you're going to email your list. So like maybe you give them a week or 2 off, but you're starting to say, hey, like I'm here, you know, and I'm giving you value. That's the thing that's important is like when you're emailing them, and the value can even sometimes as an artist, it can be like, hey, check out what I did on this trip this weekend, or like check out this cool hike I went on. People might find that super interesting as well, since they're interested in you as a person, not so much just your music. But I would encourage people to try it out because I just would be really interested to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Especially if you engage with them and say like, hey, what do you think about this? Ask questions so they have to reply.
Yeah, actually, exactly. Get to know them.
Number 28 on release day. So you only have 2 things to do on release day, which is at this point, you may have landed some press from all your following up and outreach. And I say may because it's kind of okay if you don't really land anything at this point. So be open to the fact that
that's
if you
another
get anything,
relationship
it's lucky.
You're doing. And so if you're starting, if this is the first one of say like an EP like you're doing, and you're doing this every 6 weeks, then, you know, like give that time. Because once they start to see your name, that could help.
Yeah, my friend who's another great producer in town and who's given me some great ideas for this checklist as well said, you know, when you're releasing songs every 6 weeks, it's awesome because you get time to like build and retry different things. And so one thing he said is like, try to only reach out to maybe 5 to 10 playlists on Spotify and 5 to 10 press people each release. And he's like,
nice.
As you grow, you're like, you keep reaching out to those 5 to 10, but you add 5 to 10 more.
Yeah.
So then it's 20, then it's 30, then it's 40.
Oh, that's great. Because that's so much less overwhelming than like, oh my God, I have to do all the press. Like,
totally.
You know, even when I'm doing, like, I have to break that. If I'm starting to feel overwhelmed and like resistant to everything, I'd be like, okay, what 3 things can I do right now? Or like 1 thing can I do right now? And don't think about like all the press in the world. Think about, I love that. And then, if you're keeping track on a spreadsheet, then you've got your 5, you've got your another 5, so on and so forth. Yeah, exactly. I love that. That's great. Great strategy.
Yeah. So, just if you got any press, treat them like royalty. Be like, thank you so much. Send them a personal letter if you can in the mail. I mean, anything that's like, I'd really value what you just did for me, because I think
thank you
that
cards.
Goes above and beyond.
Simple
thank
way
you cards.
to do that.
Because when you're only reaching out to 50 people or 10 people and one of them says, I really like you, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, a card is really easy. And like, who sends cards anymore? They could even be branded to your, maybe you have postcards or greeting cards.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
You could probably make that on Canva.
Yeah.
So release week. So this is like after release day, the whole week. Now you're finally going to reach out to the Spotify playlist. And the reason for that is that you need an actual Spotify link to send to the playlister. I'm pretty sure that is standard practice these days. It's like, okay, the song is new. We're not doing the press where it's like unreleased, but we're doing playlisters who are like, oh yeah, I'll add it. Because in order to add it, they need to actually have the Spotify song link to then add the song to Spotify, or they just need to have the song needs to be in the Spotify database, if that makes sense. So you're going to start reaching out to your Spotify playlists. And, following, this is something where you might be following up with those people as you're starting to release your next song. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's going to happen here. And then number 30 is play a live stream or live show to help promote the new single. This is up to you. This is kind of like, okay, we did it. Let's get out into public and tour or do whatever you want to do.
And you could even ask, like, you'll see through all your emailing who's been on your list. You could even ask your most diehard fans at this point, like, to share your posts and like, hey, could you share that I'm coming to town, or share them doing the live stream, kind of, keeping even a spreadsheet maybe aside of those top fans that you kind of see with their contact information, because you could end up maybe sending them a thank you card if they do extra sharing and stuff, just give. Yeah. Show your gratitude.
Yeah. It's hard work, and there's nothing easy about being an artist. But the reward is, I think, the greatest out of any career you could possibly have. I definitely
because if we could keep in that from that love lens, I read that today in a friend's post, or was that yesterday? How she's been really grateful for the community around her that throughout all the shit that's been happening throughout this year, that she's got people around who are keeping her in this love lens, and it's totally true. Like if you can remember why you're doing this and that what you are giving to the world does have value. You won't be showing up to this work like, ugh, I have to do this. If you show up to this work like, oh my God, I have to fucking do this today. Like, you get to do this today. And like, you get to engage with the people who can't wait to hear from you. And I think showing up and even like a few steps of gratitude, like a few being noticed or noticing and writing down like 3 things you're grateful for every day can really help you start to shift that, especially if you feel resistant to it.
Yeah,
which it's been wonderful. A practice for me.
I love that.
Anyway.
So at the end of the checklist, we are done now.
Wow, this is great.
30 steps minus 26, 29 steps. Yeah, I wanted at the end, there's an actual checklist you can print out.
This is great.
That has all the weeks.
Printing now.
You can print it and start checking it off in real time with your ink pen, which always feels good.
Doesn't it? I think it does. Oh, Wilson, that's incredible. You're just, like your gifts of this. Sharing it to the world. So
this is my go-giver.
Yes. So you guys can go and find it. Thank you, Wealthy Artists, for listening to this and following along. And may you have the most successful releases. You can get this checklist and watch this on YouTube and follow along if that's helpful. You can find it at elevatedmusicstudio.co, right?
Elevatedmusic.co.
Sorry, elevatedmusic.co. We'll put it in the show description, and just enter your email. You'll get the checklist. And thank you all for being here and for subscribing and listening. Write a review for us if you can. It really helps us get all this stuff out there and help other artists. We really appreciate it. We are on Patreon and we're getting that together. We are going to be releasing episodes early to patrons. So you get the YouTube and the audio episode early. We're working on that and some other really fun ways that we want to engage with you all as we are building this here. And this is episode 35? So
35.
So exciting. Yeah. Thank you all so much for being here. It wouldn't work if y'all didn't show up. And Wilson, if you didn't make this awesome podcast checklist thing.
Yeah. Well, we are so excited to be sharing this stuff with you. We love talking about this clearly because we are just talking about it constantly.
Right. It's nice to have someone to process it with. And if there are things that y'all want to hear out there, please let us know in the comments. We would love to know what topic and your music business is like. And actually, I got some feedback from my mom. She was listening, and she said, my mom is a entrepreneur. She's a quilter, and she's also a musician. But she said that she loves listening because it really applies to not just musicians, but to all entrepreneurs in a lot of ways. And
that's what we're going for.
Yeah. So
I want to keep it going. It might even be fun. One of my favorite podcasts, they always answer listener questions.
Yeah.
And we just need, it'd be cool though, is if we need like a form on our website so people can ask questions easily.
Yeah, well, you can just email us at thewealthyartistpodcast@gmail.com and ask your questions. And we'll put all that in the show notes. And you guys are fantastic. Listen to new episodes every Monday.
Yeah.
We'll be here.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
See ya.